always. Head right. So.
Don't record it.
So I took my seat in the 1-3 match the stack. I'm in for $1,000, ready to play one of my very last sessions here on this incredible trip in Round Rock, Texas. So we wait a few orbits before finally picking up our first playable hand, where there's a straddle under the gun to $6. A few seats over, an older gentleman who hasn't played very many hands, he decides to raise and make it $35.
Cup of coffee, man, yeah.
It folds to me and I make the call, trying to set mine and flop a big hand against what I hope is a strong range. We go heads up to a flop of ace, ace, jack. He checks and I decide to check it back. I would assume that he would start betting a lot of his aces or really strong made hands on this board, so at this point I was sensing a lot of weakness. The turn is a 3 of diamonds. He starts betting and puts out a bet of $20. Again, sensing weakness and thinking I can get him to fold a lot of his hands by the river, hands like kings, queens, tens, a jack, so I decide to start bluffing as I don't think our pocket sevens are likely good at this point, so I raise it up and make it $75. He still is acting very unsure and then finally puts in the call for $75, so we're going to a river card, which is another jack. He checks it over to me and at this point I think I can get him to fold all of his other pairs like kings, queens, tens. From the type of player I thought he was, I think he would fold anything but an ace at this point, so with our hand now getting counterfeited, we can't win unless we try to bet, so that's what was kind of going through my mind at the moment, so I decided to put out a bet of $145.
Oh!
Can he do it? Can he convince himself to call? He wants.
Horrible timing because he doesn't think very long before saying all in, and of course I quickly muck my hand as I cannot beat anything.
Damn it.
And then he flips over pocket jacks, so we just decided to bluff into quads. Great first hand and great start to this session.
Well, leave it to me to bluff into quads against probably one of the tighter players at the table, which is actually why I decided to go for the bluff. We can't win when we get counterfeited on that board, and it's just unfortunate that obviously he was at the stone top, had the essential nuts, just kind of ran into it. Sucks. I don't usually go for those types of plays. All right, gonna get back in there. Probably not gonna play that much longer, so hopefully we can double up our stack or win some pots and end this on a good note so we can come back and fire the tournament tomorrow.
In this hand, middle position limps for $3, the hijack raises to $10, the cutoff calls, the button calls, and I call in the small blind, so we're going 5 ways to a flop of queen, queen, deuce. It checks all the way around to the button, who puts out a bet of $25. I'm not going to fold my pair just yet, as it's very likely I'm still ahead. So I put in the call, and we go heads up to a turn card, which is a very disguised, beautiful 7. So now we've upgraded to a full house. I check it over to the button again, now hoping that he has a really strong hand, and unfortunately, he checks back, so we head to a river card, which is the 10 of diamonds. I gotta go for some value now, so I put out a bet of $75. Unfortunately, he folds very quickly, and he said he was full of crap on the flop and had absolutely nothing, so I think we picked up as many chips as we are possibly gonna get on that hand. In this hand, there's a raise in middle to early position to $15. The guy to my right makes the call, and I look down at ace jack of clubs, and I decide to put in the 3 bet to isolate and hopefully play a pot in position heads up, and I make it $60. The original raiser folds, and then the guy to my right raises to $615. Not quite sure what to make of this play, but I do know that my ace jack of clubs looks like a shriveled up napkin, so I decide to put in the fold, and he shows ace king offsuit, so he put in a little bit of a squeeze play there and ended up working out for him, and unfortunately I keep running into it. In this hand, the $6 straddle is on. It folds to me on the button, and I look down at the beautiful ace king of spades. I raise it up and make it $20. Only the big blind calls, so we go heads up to a flop. The flop is 8 ace deuce with 2 clubs. He checks it over to me, and I bet $20. He calls. The turn brings in the flush. It's the 5 of clubs. He checks, and I decide to check back. The river is another 8, so now our hand is looking pretty good, unless he has, of course, some sort of ace-x combination that he called the flop with. He checks, and now I'm definitely going to go for value after he checks to me 3 times, and I put out a bet of $50. He pretty much snap calls, and I show my hand, and he mucks, and we finally take down a pot here at this 1-3 match the stack.
You're not.
So at this point, I'd be lying to you if I said that the frustration wasn't kicking in just a little bit. I felt like I couldn't get anything going and nothing was going my way. I'm under the gun and I look down at King Queen offsuit. I raise to $15. There's 2 callers in middle position, so we're going 3 ways to a flop. We flop the stone nuts. It comes 9-10 jack rainbow. I'm gonna continue betting here, especially because we just flopped the nuts, so I bet $20. They both call, so we're going 3 ways to a turn card, which is an ace. I bet $60 and only 1 player calls, so we're heading heads up to a river card, which is a 7, no flushes available. Gotta keep going for value here, so I make it $175 and my opponent tanks and tanks for so long. He eventually flips over one of his cards, which was an 8, so he's tanking with a straight. At this point, I'm not sure what's taking him so long to call, as the only hand that beats him is exactly King Queen. There are hands that he beats, and he just kept saying she has to have King Queen, and unfortunately for us, the quote-unquote run bad continues because he ends up folding his straight.
Wow! How do you fold that hand?
What a heck of a fold there. Props to you, man. Sick fold. And unfortunately, we don't get paid on the river, but we do pick up another pot.
So the 2-3 match to stack broke and it was the last game running, so now I'm kind of forced to go play the 1-2 game, so hopefully I can run it up. Sucks to have to quit that game and then jump in a smaller game, but you know what? It makes for a good story and hopefully we can run up a stack at the 1-2 game. So max buy-in is 300 and let's see if we can run it up and get unstuck, guys. That would be awesome.
So I don't wait very long to get a playable hand, because the very first hand I look down at under the gun is Ace Queen offsuit. I pick up 2 early position callers, the button calls, and then the big blind announces raise and then puts 15 back out there. No one was quite sure what he was trying to do, so the dealer announced that the raise had to be to $28. The entire table called the $28, so we went 6 ways to a flop. There's a lot of flops I could imagine that would be great for my hand, but none better than what comes. It is ace, queen. We flop the absolute nuts, top full house. There's nothing that beats us. The big blind puts out a bet of $45. The under the gun original limper, he goes all in and he has about $150. There's nothing really for me to do here except go all in, because now the effective stacks are about $100, so I say all in, push all my chips in. The original leader on the flop decides to fold, and I scoop almost a full double up here against ace jack or ace king, something like that, so we cooled him off a little bit, flopping top full house against his trip aces.
We do it! Bulldozer!
Not a bad start, and we are finally on our road out of Stuckville. So before this hand started, I had played a few hands that either got to a really cheap showdown or I raised and had to fold after we went multi-way to a flop that I missed. In this hand, I look down at ace king offsuit under the gun and I make it $15. I get 4 callers, so we are going 5 ways to a flop, and it comes ace 8 9 with 2 diamonds. I definitely want to charge all worse hands at this point and flush draws, so I'm gonna bet and I make it $25. I pick up 2 callers from the guy to my left and the button, so we're going 3 ways to a turn card. The turn is an offsuit 7. I want to continue betting and charge all flush draws, all straight draws, and all worse aces, so I put out a bet of $70. The button tanks for so long, he really doesn't want to call, but he also really doesn't want to fold. At this point, I'm thinking it's most likely he has a flush draw. He does indeed put in the call, and we head to a river, which is the 10 of diamonds. Not the card I wanted to see at all. Up until this point, and the hands I'd seen him play, he was playing very straightforward. Whenever he bet and people folded, he always liked to show if he had it or not. He always had a strong made hand. So I check, and sure enough, he does exactly what I think he's gonna do. He goes all in for $122. All day I feel like I've been getting monster hands and having to make big laydowns, so I was definitely frustrated, but at this point I wanted to stay disciplined and fold when I know I'm behind or should be behind a lot of the time. So I make a disciplined fold, and he was kind enough to show king 9 of diamonds, so he did indeed river the flush, and we made our first nice fold of the day. In this hand, there's a raise under the gun to $10. The button calls, and I peel from the big blind with 10-7 of diamonds. The flop comes 10-7 jack rainbow, so we flop ourselves 2 pair. I check it over to the under the gun player who also checks, and the button checks behind, so we go 3 ways to a turn card. The turn is an offsuit 4 and there's no flushes available. I want to start betting with my 2 pairs, so I lead for $20. Both players call, so we head to a river, which is an offsuit 8. It brings 4 to a straight, but I still think my 2 pair is going to be good here enough of the time that I can get values from maybe a jack or a 10, and I think I can bet small here and obviously fold to a raise, so I put out a block bet of $10. Under the gun calls and the button folds, and we show our hand and he shows ace-10 suited, so we outflop him and got a little bit of extra value there on the river, as he's likely checking back if we don't bet there. In this hand, I raise ace-king offsuit under the gun to $15 and pick up 3 callers, so we go 4 ways to a flop of queen 8-7 with 2 spades. On this board against multiple players, I decide to check, and it checks all the way around. The turn brings an offsuit 8. I decide to start betting here, and I make it $15 and pick up 2 callers, so we're going 3 ways to a river, which is a king, but it's the king of spades, so it does bring in the flush. I check, we all check, and I show my top pair, top kicker, and it's good, and we take down a small but nice pot. So at this point in the session, I felt like I had a pretty good grasp on the table, and I like to open up my range a little bit more at these lower stakes games because a lot of people play fit or fold post flop. So I like to start opening over limps with hands like jack 10 offsuit, king jack offsuit, ace 10 offsuit, and so on, and play pots in position against hands that I either have beat or I can put the aggression on post flop and get them to fold. So in this hand, there's a couple limps for $2, and I look down at ace-10 offsuit, and I want to isolate and charge all worse hands, so I make it $17. Only the big blind calls, so we go heads up to a flop. The flop is ace-3 king with 2 hearts. He checks it over to me, and now I'm going to bet for value, and I make it $25. He calls, so we head to a turn card, which is an offsuit 8. He checks, and I decide to check it back. The river is the king of diamonds, and he decides to lead for $25. I'm not going to fold for this price. I don't see any value in raising, so I make the call. He shows 10-9 of clubs, so we get to bluff catch there and take down a pot. Alright, in one of the very last hands I play, there's a limp under the gun 2. I raise on the button with pocket kings to $15. He calls, so we go heads up to a flop. The flop comes ace queen 9 with 2 spades. Not the ideal flop for pocket kings. He checks, and I decide to check back, even though a lot of times I'm going to continue barreling. Even though an ace comes when I have pocket kings, it doesn't matter, we still have range advantage. The turn is another queen. He checks, now I want to start betting for denial, and I make it $10. He makes the call, so we're headed to a river card. The river saves us if we were behind. It's an offsuit king, and now we have upgraded to a full house. He checks, and I bet $25, hoping to be called, although at this point I feel like his range is very weak and I'm not sure what hands he can call here with, but he does call and he shows queen 10, so he had trips and just decided to call there in a small pot. I was pretty confused, but of course very happy to catch that king on the river.
Alright, well, it is almost 5 a.m. I think this is the longest poker session I've played in probably over a year. Nothing crazy, but at least made back a little bit of my losses from the match to stack. Had a blast, honestly. The players here are so nice, friendly, good vibes. I'm having a great time, so it's nice to kind of stay and play a little bit, have some fun, but I am gonna go get some sleep and play the 6 p.m. Monster Stack tomorrow. So I'll see you guys tomorrow.
So it was finally time for me to try some indoor rock climbing, so we headed to the Austin Bouldering Project where Aaron showed me how to climb and the different techniques and stuff like that. I didn't realize how big of a community this was. The culture was so great, and honestly, it's something I definitely will be doing again in the near future. I had an absolute blast. So I headed back to the lodge to play in the Mystery Bounty Tournament. $500 buy-in got you 30,000 chips. I jumped in at about level 4 and I couldn't really get anything going until I found myself with about 20 big blinds all in. There's a raise under the gun and I had ace-king offsuit, so I shoved and he ended up making the call with king 5 offsuit and hit the 5 ball and knocked me out, so that was bullet number 1. Bullet number 2 started off a lot better as we picked up a nice pot early when we knocked out a player with pocket aces versus ace jack. I then played a pot where I had king queen versus king jack, and we got it all in on a queen high flop, and unfortunately she hit her straight on the turn, so we lost a big chunk there. Then I found a really good spot where there was a raise on the button and a short stack shoved all in, which I knew he'd be doing that very wide. I look down in the big blind at pocket jacks,
Pocket jiggities.
and I reshove, and we're facing ace 4 of clubs. The flop and turn looked good until the river crushed our dreams of winning this mystery bounty because it was an ace and we get knocked out. So we dusted off 2 bullets in this mystery bounty event, and now it's time to wrap up the trip and play one last cash session. So I only played a few interesting hands that I'll share with you guys before wrapping up this amazing trip in Austin. So I bought into this 1-2 game for $300, which was the max, and before I turned on my camera, I had won a pot with ace queen, so our stack is now at $340 when I play this hand. There's a straddle to $5 and 1 limp under the gun 2, and I look down at king queen and I make it $15 to go. The cutoff, the straddle, and the under the gun limper calls, so we go multi-way to a flop of 5-5-6. I still retain all the strongest hands like aces, kings, queens, and jacks, and if I bet here, I can likely get this pot heads up and continue barreling on a lot of cards that'll make our opponent fold everything except a super nutted hand like obviously a full house or trip 5s. He can't have very many strong hands because of the pre-flop action, and I have the most uncapped range here, so I do decide to continue betting, and I bet $20. I get 1 caller, so we head to a turn card, which is the 10 of diamonds, and it brings in a diamond flush draw. Now he's going to have a hard time continuing with all under pairs and hands that contain a 6, so I keep on the pressure and I bet $45. Luckily for us, he folds pretty quickly, and I think that we can just go off with king queen offsuit there because king high is probably not the best hand, and it's a hand that we can turn into a bluff, and luckily for us, it worked out this time. Alright, this was one of the very last hands I played here at the lodge in Round Rock, Texas, and it was probably the most interesting hand I played. There's a straddle under the gun, and I'm next to act with ace-jack offsuit, and I raise to $15. The small blind, who's a drunk gentleman, makes the call. He's been playing very splashy, drunk, loose, crazy, bluffing.
What the cocktail, man? I mean, it's like, what's up with this, man? Play this table and wait forever?
I told you he was thirsty.
He's in there and also the original straddler, so we're going 3 ways to a flop. The flop is queen 8-6 with 2 hearts. The flop checks around, and so we head to a turn card, which is the ace of diamonds. The small blind leads for $15. The straddler folds and I make the call. The river is the king of hearts, so it does bring in a flush. The drunk gentleman thinks for such a long time, I wasn't even sure if he knew it was his turn. He takes some chips out and then puts them back in his stack, and then he carved out another bet and took those chips back. Finally, he carves out a bet of $60. I have no idea what to think at this point, but I think my hand against this particular player is just a little bit too strong to make a fold here. We have a pretty decent hand. I think for a little bit and then make the call, and he flips over 8-6 offsuit. So on one of our very last hands, we find a nice pot to end the session. So my phone charger and my phone charger's charger died, so my phone was on the last bit of battery, so I wasn't able to get my cash out, but I was in for $300 and I cashed out for about $550 for a profit of $255.
Well, that's gonna do it for my vlog here in Austin, Texas. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, would you do me a huge favor and go all in and like, comment, and subscribe? It would mean the world to me. Remember, we're just getting started on this journey and it's only up from here. I'll see you guys next time.